Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Wrestling Guardians podcast. It's been a bit of a while since we've recorded anything, but obviously with WrestleMania around the corner, it's always a good time to dip back in and see what's going on in the world of wrestling. Just to catch everybody up, how are you doing in here? How's life with you, and how are you enjoying your wrestling at the moment?
Doing okay, Dan. I hope you're keeping well too. Just getting back into wrestling with Mania season in full swing. We've got AEW pay-per-view this weekend as well, which would be pretty exciting. So, yeah, it's some good wrestling content around the corner, hopefully.
Yeah, we probably might touch on the upcoming AW show later on, but yeah, there's some pretty intriguing matches in there. Not been following it religiously, I would say, but certainly the Punk and MJF stuff's been keeping me interested, and some of the stuff with Danielson and Moxley. But yeah, obviously WrestleMania is always the big one, and it always does bring back quite a few fans into the wrestling fold. Do you still think that does WWE still have that ability though to bring back as many fans as it used to? Because it's still WrestleMania, but we know that the stars of the past that used to come back on a part-time basis to maybe have a featured match at WrestleMania are just too old now to do that, and it's kind of WrestleMania but with the current roster, and it just feels kind of a little bit weak and flimsy. I don't know if you agree with that, but
Um, Dan, so I think I would ask the same. I've asked the same question, several times, but I don't think that's necessarily the case this year because I think they've pulled a few rabbits out of the hat with several celebrities and names from the past potentially coming back, and Ronda Rousey being in the mix as well is something that adds star power to the card, if nothing else. So, I feel this card kind of stands out in a way just because there are so many wacky names on the card that you wouldn't really expect. So, for me, this is looking like the most loaded WrestleMania card since the one in New York or the one where Daniel Bryan came back. Um, Other than that, yeah. Other than that, we've had a few weak manias in recent years, but I don't feel like this card is shaping up to be one of those.
yeah, that's fair enough. It's certainly done enough. Well, they've done enough already to pique some interest, and hence, this is why we thought of maybe doing another podcast, because it can be difficult, being sort of wrestling fans and people who sort of talk about it online. When the product isn't as particularly good and there aren't those stars that you tune in for every week, it can be difficult to keep something like this up. But yeah, I mean, there's several talking points for us to talk about today, and yeah, I'd agree with you. I think they're probably doing the best that they probably can with what they've got, and maybe even surpassing some of the expectations that people have of them at the moment. I mean, so in terms of like the big names that we expect to see at the show, obviously you've mentioned Rousey as well, and I think that was a great get for WWE at the moment. Doesn't matter what her character's doing or how kind of fans think of her, she's always going to be that name that people are going to recognise and tune in for. So I think that's brilliant. You've got the more sort of bizarre things coming up. Speculation about Stone Cold coming back for a match for the first time since WrestleMania 19, which is pretty crazy in itself. And then probably the biggest surprise of all is a potential match involving Vince McMahon himself. So I don't know, a bit of a mix of intrigue and interest, but also I don't know sort of how confident we are going in terms of how this is going to come across on the night. But yeah, I imagine you're pretty excited by Stone Cold's return, if nothing else.
Dan, I don't expect Stone Cold Steve Austin to actually have a wrestling match. That rumor seems to have died down a little bit. There hasn't been any word that they're actually going to do a match. It looks as though Owens and Rollins are going to be in some sort of tag team match at WrestleMania. And then once they're done, Austin probably comes out and stuns both of them. That's where I think we're heading. I would love to see Austin put on the vest and walk down that ramp and do one more match. But I have a feeling that it's not going to happen.
I mean, would you like to see that? I mean, because I know that there's some superstars that manage to kind of orchestrate their own ending to their career and everything, and Stone Cold didn't really get that opportunity. So there's an argument there of if he could come back and do something on his own terms that sort of set him off well, but is he too big of a star? Does he really need that now? And is there too much of a risk that if he did have an in-ring return, it would kind of tarnish the career a little bit?
No, I don't think so. I think it's just gravy at this point. Dan, so I don't think Austin needs to do like a 15 or 20-minute match. It just needs to be something, anywhere between 7 to 10 minutes, short attention span theater, lots of spots, and then, you go home quickly after some brawling as well. It's all about the promos, right, with Austin at the end of the day. So that's what you're gonna annoy. I mean, sorry, pardon me, enjoy. And then you're gonna have the big entrance at Mania. The glass shattering, and all those people going crazy. That would be the allure of a WrestleMania match for Austin with me.
Do you think there was like a particular time where that kind of return could have worked better? Because with The Rock, he came back for those two matches against Cena, and say what you will about them, they were still main events of WrestleManias, and they weren't terrible. The first one at 28 was actually pretty good, and it certainly didn't do anything to kind of sour the taste of fans about The Rock or anything. But it seemed like a return worthy of the guy himself, and I don't know whether there was a perfect opportunity for Stone Cold to do that. I mean, most fans would maybe say a feud with Punk would have maybe done that for him, but I don't know if sort of the boat sort of sailed on that one now.
I mean, if nothing else, the Rock and Cena stuff, the program itself was entertaining. You had to watch week in, week out, which to me is more entertaining, which is more important than the match itself. Yeah, probably a match with Punk, Dan, you're right. A few years ago, he and Brock Lesnar did that thing on the Stone Cold podcast where they talked about a Texas death match. Maybe something between those two would have been good to see. Yeah, and I think in 2005 there were reports that he could come out of retirement and take on Hulk Hogan. So those are the few instances that come to mind.
Yeah. It always feels like, I mean, I don't know the exact ins and outs of it, but it's one of those other things that they could have done with Punk where for some reason it didn't happen. Punk never got his WrestleMania main event. He wasn't allowed to appear at sort of UFC shows and things which is what he was asking for. He wasn't allowed to advertise coming to the ring, and it was pretty clear at one point that he really wanted, really could see the benefit of having a program with Stone Cold, and obviously that didn't happen either. So it's all these things that just added up over the years that really sort of let him know that he wasn't particularly highly regarded in the company. So it's just one of those revisionist history things of if it would have happened, him versus Stone Cold, and they would have given him that responsibility, then maybe things would have been different and he would still be a WWE guy today. But
yeah, exactly. I mean, as a wrestling fan, there isn't, anything I'd rather see in wrestling than Austin have one more match, but I don't think that's going to happen. Yeah.
Yeah, but definitely some kind of an involvement, and like you say, with Austin, even in the glory days, it was the promo work that you really tuned in for. I mean, he certainly wasn't bad in the ring, and he had some compelling matches, but it was the talking that people most appreciated. So if he is involved in that in the run up to WrestleMania or even at the show itself, then that's something that we should be, I guess, grateful for, really, because we don't get anywhere near that level of mic work and star power today compared to back then.
Absolutely agree with you on that.
So another match that looks like it is probably more likely to happen, although again we don't know how much of a match, so to speak, it's going to be. But the in-ring return, I guess, of Vince McMahon. So last time, obviously, he was involved in anything in-ring was I think against. Well, funnily enough, actually, it was against CM Punk, wasn't it, on an episode of Raw? Last WrestleMania in-ring appearance, I guess, was Brett, wasn't it, at 26?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
That classic.
Yeah, exactly. And that was 12 years ago, so I don't know what exactly we're supposed to be expecting now. But yeah, no, I mean, it sounds like you know a little bit more about this than I do. But there's it's some kind of involvement with Pat McAfee. I mean, what's for you? Kind of what is the reasoning behind this? Like, where do you think they're going for this?
I mean, they're going for this because then they have a lot of tickets to sell for WrestleMania, essentially. I believe they've sold about 50-ish thousand tickets for both nights. And, they need to move tickets badly and so that they can get a good visual going into WrestleMania. So Pat McAfee is this massive figure in the world of sports, and if he's doing a WrestleMania match with the eccentric, crazy owner of the WWE, that's something that the mainstream might pick up on, and it could become this sort of freak show affair that everybody might tune in to see, sort of like when Donald Trump got involved at WrestleMania at WrestleMania 23, and that ended up being a big deal too. So that's probably what they're going for. Apparently, it's going to be like a lot of smoke and mirrors and everything. Austin Theory, you could presume, will have a lot of involvement in that match and do like a lot of the work there. So, yeah. So I mean, that's what it is. I mean, it'll be hilarious if Vince McMahon's on the card. I mean, his promo work and everything will be entertaining if nothing else.
I quite enjoy the the crazy old man promos that Vince sometimes puts out. Like he always goes on these sort of intangible like rants about something, and it's like for the wrestling purist, you might think this isn't the way to do promos, but Vince McMahon is allowed to get away with a bit more than most people, so I certainly wouldn't mind. Again, going back to the similar with Stone Cold, it's not really the in-ring stuff that we're interested in, it's the build-up and the potentials for the promos and everything. But again, with anything like this, and this may just be me being too optimistic, I suppose, as a wrestling fan, but you would like to think that someone would come out of this looking, having their sort of profile raised. And you've mentioned Austin Theory, and obviously because of his association with Vince for so long now, you would think that this would be a perfect opportunity for him to have a really good sort of in-ring showing and for him to kind of move on to bigger and better things. But again, it's a WWE and we don't really expect that from them. It's, you mentioned the Donald Trump thing at 23, like it didn't particularly do anything for Lashley or Umaga, so I'm not holding out hope for that, but it would be nice if this was a bit of a launch pad for Austin Theory.
Yeah. I mean, just the fact that he's the heel and aligned with Vince McMahon, I don't know how, I don't know how they're going to maneuver it so that this guy ends up getting the rub. I think it's going to end up giving Pat McAfee more of a rub than anything else, so I don't know.
It's always the way, isn't it? Like whenever a celebrity is brought in, it's not for the benefit of the wrestlers. It's for the ticket sales, like you say, and the eyeballs and everything. But I get WrestleMania. I'm not someone who is completely dead against celebrity involvement. I mean, I agree that there's been plenty of times when it's gone too far. Looking at you, WCW, but. WrestleMania, I think, is the one night in the wrestling calendar that you can get away with just throwing things at it. If it catches people's attention, it's fine. It might not come off exactly how us hardcore internet fans want it to, but if it gets that attention, then I really don't really see a problem with it. I'm just thinking, I don't know if I can really call myself a hardcore fan anymore. I think I used to be maybe about 10 years ago, but I think I've definitely become a bit of a casual fan now.
I mean, yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah. I mean, with regards to the current product, definitely. I personally feel like I have patches where I'll follow the product a lot more closely than others, but yeah, I mean, it's quite difficult to follow it for a 365-day cycle.
But yeah, I get it. Is it, if you were given the choice, Vince McMahon versus Pat McAfee on a WrestleMania stage, or some 45-minute quote unquote classic between Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano, I think I'd probably probably still lump for the former, actually.
Oh, absolutely. That's not even a question. I'm not watching 45 minutes. I'm not watching anybody wrestle for 45 minutes.
It's no surprise that because I think I sort of flirted with New Japan for a few years, but you soon realise that you have to just become accustomed to like 30-minute plus matches, like one after another, and there's only so much that you can put up with. You just find yourself thinking, like, just give me a ridiculous match between a celebrity that's never set foot in a ring before. Give me a palate cleanser of some kind.
Oh, you need some Bad Bunny action on there.
Bad Bunny is such an interesting one because, like, you have to, like, for me anyway, like, on one level, you have to sort of stand back and appreciate what he can do. I don't know what kind of training he's had, but he's always pretty impressive. But then it's like Jim Cornette always makes the point of, like, if somebody can come in like that and do those moves better than the wrestlers that are on the roster, that doesn't really look great for your product. So it's
I'm sure that the same people who love Bad Bunny doing all of this stuff were probably shitting on WCW when they had Jay Leno put Hulk Hogan in a wrist lock.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, I think if it doesn't interfere with the main event storylines too much, then I think it's okay. Like, Bad Bunny appearing in Royal Rumble and giving everybody a bit of a show and waking people up because it's such a boring Royal Rumble, is okay. But then giving the title to David Arquette is not okay. There are limits to it.
Exactly. And besides, I think WWE has trained you to realize it doesn't matter who it is. I mean, at the end of the day, everybody has a job to Roman Reigns.
Yeah, exactly. There's always going to be that glass ceiling. But I guess there's one other person that we are expecting to appear at Mania that maybe we'll talk about in a little minute. But in terms of just drawing attention to the matches that we already know are set for the card, so obviously we mentioned Reigns and Lesnar, and what else have we got? Is it Becky and Bianca is pretty much set now?
Ronda, Charlotte,
yeah. Again, like those 6 names, even given the current times where the roster isn't particularly impressive, like those 6 men/women are recognisable names that are going to draw people in. I think maybe not the proper casual fans that never watch the product, but people who know a little bit about wrestling will be at least a little bit interested in seeing these, I think.
Yeah, so then, like, we were talking about this card being a little bit better than previous years, and I think that those top three matches, like, that's a legitimate, top 3 to have, like that. That's something that you'd come away impressed by in most years.
And I think it was Edge and AJ Styles was confirmed last night, was it? Or
it was confirmed. Last night.
Which again, I really don't have a problem with, because I mean, like WrestleMania, I think is always better when you do have those matches that are just 2 guys that are just trying to one up each other, like that sort of grudge match where there's nothing on the line necessarily. It's just a bit of a spectacle. I think that's absolutely okay. Sort of reminds me a little bit of like Benoit and Angle at WrestleMania 17. It's like 2 guys that didn't really have anything to do, that just sort of came together to have a match, and
Yeah, and you have Edge again, plenty of star power. People from the previous generation are all very familiar with Edge, and AJ Styles is a name they've heard of too, even if they haven't watched his work. So yeah, another whole storyline that works.
Yeah, and I think it is a real big shame, obviously for the person himself as well, but like for fans that Lashley probably won't be appearing now, because that's another name that will draw in some fans from MMA and people who maybe sort of used to watch TNA back in the day or whatever. Like he's a name that somewhat transcends the current sort of wrestling bubble. So he would have been another great asset to the card. I mean, I don't know. I haven't really seen the latest on it, but it looks pretty unlikely that he'll be fit and ready for it now. But...
Oh, he's out. He's done. He's not making Mania.
Yeah, it's a really big shame. I did think actually when they were still pretty unclear about what to do with the WWE title, they could have maybe orchestrated something where they had like Lashley and Lesnar for the WWE title on night 1, and then Lesnar and Reigns night 2 for the Universal. Like, again, that would have been 2 really big, high-profile matches for the 2 titles, but obviously we haven't got that now. So I guess that they're just going for a champion versus champion thing, are they, or some kind of? Is there any talk of unification or?
Oh yeah, it's a winner-take-all unification deal done.